All right, hey guys, it's Sakrup from the channel Sakrup and Books, and I have with me today Brittney Morris. So if you want to introduce yourself and then talk about this book, it came out early March, and if you would just want to talk about it, kind of pitch it, that'd be great.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Hi, Sakrup. Thanks for having me. My name is Brittney Morris. I'm the author of Slay and most recently The Cost of Knowing. Both are actually behind you. um, for those who don't know, Slay is about a 17-year-old game developer named Kira Johnson who creates a Wakanda-inspired virtual reality video game and has to duel a racist troll using duel cards based on black culture and black history to maintain control of the game. And The Cost of Knowing is about two brothers. One can see into the future and one can see into the past. And everything changes when the older brother sees a vision of his younger brother dying in the next few days. So it becomes a race against time to get to the bottom of this 400-year-old family curse and figure out what it means to be a joyful Black boy in the present. So both of those books I'm super excited about, super proud of, and super happy to talk to you about today.
All right, yeah. Just to preface this, I've read Slay, but I haven't read The Cost of Knowing yet. I read Slay for
Okay.
this book club that I kind of started, and it was a great discussion. I loved Slay, and I
Aw.
just cannot wait to read this one. I wanted to kind of talk about like how did Slay at all kind of impact this book? Because they both have kind of different premises and different kinds of main characters, but did Slay at all like kind of impact or influence The Cost of Knowing?
That's a great question. So kind of. When I first started, brainstorming The Cost of Knowing, I set out to write a Black Boy Joy book. The idea was, since I had already written Slay, and Slay celebrated people of, Black people from all over the world, all genders, it mostly focused on women and the strength of Black women, specifically in gaming. And I wanted a book to do the same thing, but specifically for Black men. There are a few Black male characters in Slay, but not a whole bunch of positive ones. And so I really wanted to do a service to Black men specifically and celebrate them. And when I started, out on this journey to write a Black Boy Joy book, I had this kid in the book who worked in an ice cream shop, and he, danced in the streets with his friends like nobody was watching, and just laughter and joy all over the place. And I got done with the outline and I looked at it closely and I said, this doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm doing a disservice to Black men and their unique struggle. And first, I really want to acknowledge what a tall order it is to expect them to be just happy and joyful, regardless of everything that they go through. And so that was where the idea for The Cost of Knowing came from.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you said about gender because I feel like both books kind of like talk about like gender norms in a way. Because I remember with Soleil, like there was this entire thing about how they were expecting her to be like the game developer. They were expecting her to be male, and they were
Yes.
not expecting like a female like game developer at all. And in this book, we're kind of talking about like how they're supposed to like lead the family, be like the provider for the family. So like, why do you always want to like kind of explore like those gender norms and like what those mean?
That's a great question. I feel like in my life specifically, I'll just preface this by saying I'm extremely privileged. I'm a cis het woman. But now that like I've grown up and kind of experienced the world, because I grew up in like a really tight bubble. It was extremely religious, extremely sheltered. I met pretty much people who were closeted or cis het. They talked about gender identity or gender exploration, or the binary or anything like that. And when I grew up and I met, real people in the real world outside of the little bubble I grew up in, I realized just how vast the world is and how vast just gender expression is. And so gender expectations and gender norms are really a passion of mine, like to talk about, just because I feel like there was so much pressure put on me as a kid to be a stereotypical woman. And to this day, a lot of the older people in my family will still put pressure on me. They'll talk about why I don't have long hair. They'll make a big deal out of it when I cut my hair. They'll make a big deal out of the fact that I don't wear makeup, all of these things. And even though I come from a place of privilege, it wears on me. And so I can't imagine what it's like to be someone who is not cishet and have those kind of gender expectations put on you all the time. So, and because I just recently had a son, it's like I want him to be free in who he is and be free to express himself however he wants to,
Yeah.
especially in our house. So yeah, that's just kind of always on my mind these days.
You recently had a son?
Yeah, he's 6 months old.
Did that kind of impact like your writing process at all?
It did. I actually had him in the middle of editing The Cost of Knowing, and because it's such a heavy book with a lot of heavy themes and the characters go through a lot as Black men, I reread that book after having him, and I realized I don't think I could write, I don't think I could have written that book now that he's here.
Mm.
Just because it took so much out of me emotionally to get that down. And now that it's like, it could be very well a reality for him to go through some of those things, I just don't know if my heart could bear it.
This isn't anything new, but do you think this book is especially important after what happened, well, last summer now? Do you think that made it especially relevant and like impertinent to like what's going on right now?
Um, I wish I could say that it did, in that I wish what happened last summer was a rare occurrence. This has been going on for years and years and years. And so I feel like talking about things like police brutality and, the oppression of Black people and the emotional tax that it takes to, censor ourselves in all white spaces is unfortunately always relevant.
Yeah.
Good
Did the
question, though.
writing
I love that one.
did the writing process change in this book from Slay, or was it like kind of the same?
It was pretty different. With Slay, I was super, super rushed to get a first draft out because I was trying to finish a manuscript in time for Pit Mag, the online Twitter pitch contest. And so I wrote Slay in 11 days, the first draft. And then with The Cost of Knowing, I took a little bit longer and took a month and a half. And then took my time, it edited, like we took our time to edit Slay. So um, similar starting processes, though. I gave myself 24 hours to outline, and then I was just off to the races with writing the book as fast as possible. Just
24 hours to outline?
24 hours, yeah. And I can space that out over days, so I can take 4 hours one day, 6 hours the
Oh,
next
okay.
day. Yeah, it's not just a 24-hour
I thought it was
window.
just like 24 consecutive hours. No, okay. All right, so you're more of a plotter than like a pantser then.
I'm kind of both. I like to loosely plot, and then as I'm writing, a whole bunch of stuff will come out. So
Yeah.
I like to call myself a planter.
Mm. What's Slay? Did you outline that final plot twist like going in, or did that just happen? I really want to know. Like, did that plot twist just come organically, or was that there from the start?
So I actually didn't realize what the plot twist was going to be until Kira was sitting in her chair after the duel and typing to the person and asked, "Who are you?" And in that moment, I ran into the other room. My husband was like making a snack in the kitchen. And granted, I have not slept in like days, have not eaten in however long. I'm a mess. I run in there frantic going, and then named the twist. And he's just going, "I'm going to make you some food. You're going to go to sleep and everything's going to be okay."
It really is a great plot twist, though. When we talked about it in the live show, everyone was just like, no one saw that coming. It really is
Aw.
great.
I'm so
Okay, so
glad.
now,
Thank you.
yeah, it really is good. So I guess now I want to talk about The Cost of Knowing. I guess first I want to talk about the covers because both of them have like Black people on the cover like very prominently. Is that something you wanted to like do, or is that something you like pitched to them, or did you have like any say in the cover process?
That's a great question. So they asked me, they being the team at Simon and Schuster, they asked me if I had any preferences for the cover with Slay. And at that point, I wanted to give my input, but I was like, they have a whole team of cover professionals that are trained to do this. I'm just going to step back and see what kind of magic they come up with. And Sarah Creech and Laura Eckes were working on the cover, and what they brought back was just Kira front and center and just pink all over the place. And it was just, my only request was that the cover would jump off the shelves. I wanted people to not be able to walk by and look at this book. And so not be able to walk by and not look at this book.
Yeah.
There we go. And so my only critique was in the original version of the cover, she is looking with like a softer gaze and her mouth was slightly open. And I said, I would love to see her look more determined and less like surprised that the camera is there. And they got back to me in like an hour with this cover. And I was like, this is it. That's the cover. Great.
It's such a good cover. I think both of these are really good covers.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you. They did a
Where did
fantastic
you?
job.
Yeah, they really are really good covers. What was it like getting the blurb, Nick Stone? And I know that Dear Martin inspired The Cost of Knowing, and I love Dear Martin. So, what was it like getting the blurbs for a sleigh?
Oh my goodness, surreal. Nick and I are actually friends now, which is wild to say because when I set out to write Slay, I was, just admiring her on Twitter as a fan. But I think Dear Martin might be the only book of that length that I've cleared in 4 hours. Like I could not put it down.
I think I read
um,
it in like a day too. And then I
it's
think I
so
read
good.
Dear Justice in like 2 days or so. Dear Justice was also
I
really
need
good.
I need to read that one. I haven't read it yet.
It's so good. Okay, so now I guess I want to actually talk about like with the plot of The Cost of Knowing instead of just the cover. What inspired you to write this book? It is a really unique book, and it like kind of deals with time and stuff like that. So, what was the inspiration for this book from like the original thing about Alex just having fun?
Good question. So it kind of started from two places, the wanting to write a Black Boy Joy book and then realizing first I needed to write a Black Boy Joy Despite book. And then also at the same time, I had this idea for a character that I couldn't get out of my head, who of all things, he worked in a toothpaste factory. I don't know why it started there, but the idea was that each tube of toothpaste that came down the conveyor belt, his job was to screw the caps on, and every time he would touch one he would see the future of it. And it at first was supposed to be like this kind of dark comedy satirical kind of thing, this like dark take on like where we are in society as humanity. Like it was supposed to get all deep and kind of sad. And then I came up with the idea of like another character working in the same factory who could see the same tubes of toothpaste but in the past and where they had been. And it clicked one day that like if these characters are going to be Black, which it's me writing a book, they're going to be Black. We kind of already live like that as Black people, sandwiched between anxiety about the future, especially with police brutality and everything going on, knowing that every time we get in our car, we could be next. And then also dealing with anxiety about the past and remembering the civil rights movement and slavery, things that are super important to remember, but that take an emotional toll. And then figuring out how to be present. And there's all this talk of like meditation and being present and being grounded. And just, I wanted to write a book about how big of an ask that is when you're living sandwiched between the future and the past. So once that clicked in my mind, I knew that was where I wanted to take the idea for a Black Boy Joy Despite book. And so they kind of just got mashed together.
It really is interesting. Would you want to have like that power? Like if you touch something, you would know like the future of it?
Absolutely not. I already have generalized anxiety. I don't know if I could deal with like constant windows into the future.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't think so either. I would not want to. I'm already anxious enough about the future. Maybe
Oh,
the
I'm so
past. I don't
sorry.
know. Maybe I would want to see like the past of an item or like where it was. Like
Yeah.
sometimes with books annotations, I'm like, oh, it's like I'm holding a book that someone held in the past. I wonder like what they did with the book and like why they chose to underline this sentence or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a
Are you
different.
really into history?
Yeah, I like history. I like
Nice.
history. Not so much like the memorization of dates though, but yeah.
Yeah, it can get tedious.
Yeah. How so you went to Boston University, right? And
Mhm.
you had a BA in economics. How does that impact your writing of your books now?
That's a great question. I have been passionate about writing since I was 9 years old. That was when I decided I wanted to be an author. And somewhere along the line, somebody convinced me to pick a major that would pay the bills. And so I picked something that was super versatile, that, looked great on a resume, and I chose economics. And I'm actually glad I did because it changed the way I think about, the cost of things and then hilarious, see what I
Cost
did
of
there.
knowing.
Uh, the cost of things and the hidden costs of things. Um, and to this day, I'm really passionate about like personal finance and cushioning people against predatory lending and just educating people about, predatory financial practices, because I feel like not enough people know how they work.
Is that something you want to like talk about in your book sometime?
I think it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. With the book I'm working on, it's called The Jump. It talks about like environmentalism and classism and kind of where they intersect. Because the kids are all trying to take down an oil refinery that's going up in their neighborhood, and they're going up against a team of cryptologists that are all from wealthy backgrounds, and so they want the refinery to stay because they all have ties to the people who work for the people who are building the refinery. So yeah, it's kind of a lower income group versus a higher income group, and then environmentalism is all in the mix. So I feel like a lot of that's going to come out in that book.
That's really interesting as well. How did you how did you know that you wanted to pitch it as Dear Martin meets They Both Die at the End? Or did that pitch just come?
So I knew They Both Die at the End was going to be a comp title because, I mean, not to give anything away that they both die at the end or anything, but in They Both Die at the End, there was so much like, there was like a countdown, right, to the end. And that's like a huge theme in the book, that there's a countdown once Alex learns that Isaiah is going to die. There's like a race against time to figure out what it means to be joyful. That seemed like a central theme, and They Both Die at the End. And then with Dear Martin, it was a really heartfelt kind of reaching into the past from a teenage boy. And so that felt very relevant also. So those are the two we picked.
So in Boston University, you did do some writing, right? You were like the leader of the writing club. Did that kind of help? And is that when you got the idea for Slay, or did it come like later on?
Yeah, so I started the Boston University Creative Writing Club because they didn't have one. I was shocked. It was a huge campus, and they had a literature club, but no creative writing club. So I was like, well, here we go. But the idea for Slay actually came much later. It was in, was it 2017? It was when Black Panther came out. I saw Black Panther in theaters, and then I immediately just wanted to go back to Wakanda. And so 3 days went by and nobody was talking about making a Wakanda video game, let alone like a virtual reality Wakanda video game. And I said, okay, I'm very uncomfortable with this. I don't know how to make a video game, but I'm going to write a book about someone who does, so that I can go back to Wakanda and take whoever wants to come with me. So that was where the idea for Slay came from.
You write for video games, right?
I do, yes.
So did that kind of help writing Slay?
Yeah, quite a bit. I actually, I think Slay put me on the radar with a few different companies that write video games, and they reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested. And I've been a lifelong gamer, so I was immediately like, absolutely.
That's really cool. That Slay kind of got you into that. Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
If Alex was in Slay, what like kind of avatar do you think he would be in? Like, that's kind of just like a random question, but like I was thinking about that.
I love that question. Oh man, that's a fun one.
Do you think he would be good?
I think he would get good eventually. I think he'd be pretty timid up front. It depends. Well, yeah, I think he'd be pretty timid up front, but I feel like he would have fun like customizing his character and like really putting a lot of thought into it. And then in the actual duels, like he might not make it the first few, but I think he would get good eventually, especially once, you start getting acclimated to the cards and you start finding cards that are relevant to you as a Black person. So especially like some of the icon cards, like the actual people. So
it would be weird for him to play though. I don't know how. Would his thing apply to video games? I don't know.
I don't know. That's kind of
tricky. Would he like touch the disc? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess since his physical hands aren't touching actual cards, the cards are in the digital world, I don't think he'd have a particular advantage in the game. I think he would just have to contend with seeing actually, because he'd be wearing gloves. So I guess he wouldn't have any visions while he's playing. So yeah, he'd probably love Slay. It'd probably give him an escape from reality.
Probably loves any video game then, I guess.
Yeah.
Was it hard to like figure out like the loopholes and like kind of like the tangible things about like his power, or did you just like go in and like figure things out like as you went?
That's a great question. I have to commend my poor editor on this one because she found a lot of holes in the idea behind his powers, and she was asking just question after question after question, and I loved it because we got to, you know, mend so many different areas that needed to be mended. So yeah, that was all her, honestly, weeding out the logistics of how the powers actually worked. So.
Yeah. I guess now I want to talk more about like the publishing of this book, and especially like following up Slay, because Slay did so well, I think, commercially. It did well. Obviously, on Goodreads, you can see it, like it has a lot of rating, a lot of reviews. But I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that there's 2-day bidding war for it, and it did really well commercially. So was it hard like trying to follow it up?
Um, Not really. And I missed like the sophomore novel syndrome
Mm.
because the cost of knowing was so different. I think if I was writing another book related to video games or another book related to, like, you know, the Pan-African diaspora, and just the global Black experience, I would have felt more pressure to make it as good as Slay. But because it was so different, and, you know, Slay is kind of a party book, and it's like, you know, how awesome it is to be Black and how much fun it is and how, you know, diverse we are. And then the cost of knowing alternatively is like, but it's also kind of difficult over here. Like, so I felt like I was saying two such vastly different things that I kind of felt free to write whatever was on my mind.
I actually do have another question about the cost of knowing. Did you purposefully set it in Chicago? And if you did, like, what's your relationship with like Chicago and the city?
I did. I actually have no personal ties to Chicago. I said it in Chicago because I feel like when white America, specifically like news networks, talk about Black children and Black youth and, you know, the school to prison pipeline and gang violence and just all of these things. I don't know why gang violence is gang violence. And they frequently refer to kids from certain cities. So LA is on the docket, Detroit's on the docket, Chicago is often in the docket. I can't tell you the number of times I've flipped on the news and they were like, you know, 75 people were dead in violence over the weekend in Chicago. Well, it's a major city. It's huge. Of course, that's going to happen. So I really wanted to focus on two kids from, you know, the east side of Chicago, and then now living on the west side of Chicago and contending with all of the stereotypes about Black kids in general, and then specifically Black kids from certain cities. So
Mm.
that was the idea behind that.
All right. I didn't know if it was just a random thing or if there was like a purpose behind that. Would you ever,
Great
you live in
question.
Philly, right?
I do, yeah.
So would you ever set a book in Philly?
I don't know. It's funny. I moved here a few years ago and I haven't really gotten to explore because of the pandemic and the baby and everything. So I don't know the city very well yet. So
Uh,
maybe.
well, hopefully you get to know. I actually live like not too far. I live in Easton. It's close to now. There's another kind of city in Pennsylvania. So
Nice.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess that's all my questions for today. If you want to say anything, then I would love that. But I think if you want to, we could end it here.
Okay. Uh, Let me see. I could talk a little bit about the jump. I don't think I actually said the plot. I think I just kind of grazed over it.
Oh yeah, I did want to ask a question about the jump. It comes out in 2023, right? And I just
Correct.
saw like something about it on Goodreads.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my goal with this book is to make it the most action-packed book I've ever written. So far there's a grocery store heist, there's a car chase, there's a daring escape through a sewer. It's going to be a wild ride. But the book is about four Seattle teens, and they run a cryptology forum. And one day, a mysterious social vigilante group appears on the forum and posts a puzzle, that should, you know, once the winner wins, they will get political influence and high-tech resources that the kids plan to use to take down an oil refinery in their neighborhood. So that's the premise. And I think I mentioned it's in Seattle, which I know the city of Seattle because I lived there for 7 years.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
really excited to write about that.
Uh, is it going to be from four different perspectives, or is it just going to be one of the
At
teams?
the moment, I'm going for four different perspectives. So this will be my first four POV book where there's four main characters. Wish
Is
me
the
luck.
cost of knowing two POV?
I know, just one.
Oh, okay, it's just one. All right.
Mhm.
And do you ever think you're gonna follow up Slayer the Cost of Knowing, or are you just gonna keep them as standalones in their own universe?
I feel like with the cost of knowing, it's gonna sound weird to say, but I feel like Alex has been through enough. I feel like I need to just leave him alone and leave him in peace. But Slay, I mean, a sequel to Slay would be a ton of fun. So maybe one day.
Yeah, I don't remember if it left off on a cliffhanger or not, but I really think it could have a great sequel. All right,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for being with me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you.
Bye.